There's actually two reasons they don't work. The first reason is because terminal server is a multi-user operating system. And some applications just freak out on the multi-user operating system. Sometimes you have things like one copy will run no problem, but the second copy will see the executable is already running and will exit. Sometimes you have things like, they're hard-coding a location on the drive where they're going to run, or where they're going to put an INI file or something like that. Sometimes you have problems with USB keys or USB devices. So there is a certain set of applications that will not run on a multi-user operating system. That is absolutely true. But that's not the only reason applications won't run on terminal server. Some applications, it goes back to the graphically intense thing, right? Some applications are too graphically intense or have too much 3D animations and moving things. I mean, high-definition video over a remote display protocol. Anyone doing this currently? Exactly. Anyone want to do this currently? Okay, so these remote high-definition applications, multiple screens, big applications, those also don't work in terminal server, right? But the reason those don't work is because those really don't work in server-based computing. So when you say that not all applications run on terminal server, you have to figure out, if you find an application that you cannot use on terminal server, is the reason you can't use it because of terminal server's multi-userness? Or is it because it's using server-based computing? If it's a terminal server multi-user problem, then yes, VDI could fix that problem. There's other ways to fix that too with application virtualization, again, the ThinApp and AppV and these kinds of solutions. But if it's a server-based computing problem, of course, then VDI does not solve the problem. And the reason I call these two things out is because a lot of people who are talking about this guy, when that guy's talking, a lot of these people, these are the reasons they're saying about the admin and the application compatibility, which is not necessarily always accurate. Now, what this means for us is that today's reality, of course, we talked about a blended solution, right? So remember, when you look at your applications, how do you decide what you're going to use? Whether it's they're deployed VDI terminal server. Remember, first, you figure out, is your application compatible with server-based computing, right? Or is your use case compatible with server-based computing? Yeah? And then the ones that are compatible with server-based computing, you blend that with the ones that are not. Then once you decide they're compatible with server-based computing, remember we're looking at where do we use terminal server versus where do we use VDI. So to take this conversation down to the end, what is the reality today for the applications that you decide will work in server-based computing? How do you decide whether you want to do terminal server or VDI? If you were to make this a very quick little thing, the reason to go with VDI is if you have specific requirements that will not work in terminal server. So sometimes maybe you do have applications where a user must run as administrator. Perhaps you've got remote developers and they're doing things and have to reboot their VMs. Perhaps you want to do live migrations of your VMs or do different things like that. So there are real reasons why VDI makes sense today. But in most cases, the advantage for terminal server is user density. Well, I should have, I told you I redrew that slide. I should have done that here too. User density in terms of cost per user. That today, I think I can say almost universally that for server-based computing solutions, the cheapest way to implement server-based computing today is with a terminal server-based solution. If you want the lowest cost, highest return on your investment, terminal server is absolutely the way to go. So for me, when I figure out which of my applications and which of my use cases work with server-based computing, I assume that everything will be terminal server. And then I figure out the specific use cases over here where terminal server won't work. And for those users, for those use cases, I use VDI. So right now, it's truly a cost-based decision. I will say also there's some potential risk. And it's funny, there's all of these VDI vendors in space today. I also write that terminal server is a proven solution. I spent 13 years in IT, about 11 years working with terminal server and his different desktop virtualization products. And I'll tell you, even today, every time I do a VDI project, I feel like I'm learning as I'm going along. Now, true, there's more vendors in that space, so maybe you do one with Symantec, and then one with Citrix, and then one with VMware. So there's more to learn. But the thing is, a terminal server running Citrix on top of that, as I said, has lots and lots of consultants, lots of users, lots of engineers, lots of trained people know how to do that. With VDI, you're sort of always figuring it out. Now again, I want to be very clear. People are taking away from this, oh, that means you don't like VDI or VDI is not useful. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying today, terminal server is the easier way to do it. Terminal server is the cheaper way to do it. But hey, if terminal server does not solve your business needs, you can't use terminal server no matter how cheap and how easy it is. If you could always use the solution that was cheapest and easiest, we'd still be using 3270 sessions on mainframes. But sometimes our requirements are such that we can't use the cheapest and easiest solution, which is why we need to go that VDI route. And I don't think that's bad. I mean, to say that VDI is not the cheapest or not the easiest solution, I think it's okay to say that. It's just that because we're not cheapest and easiest, we are getting additional functionality, additional use cases that we don't get with terminal server. So that's where we are today. For the final part of what I want to look at, I skipped over this one. This is who do we use for VDI today? There's a lot of companies in this space. Yeah, good luck with that. So as we'll see in this next slide, this future is that there are a lot of companies, there's a lot of changes, there's a lot going on right now in the VDI space. So what does our future hold? So everything I'm talking about so far is what is available today. Today, VDI costs more than terminal server, period. It is more complex than terminal server. Yet you can do more with it, but it costs more, it's more complex. So in this future, though, people say, is VDI dead? Is VDI a stupid fad? Is VDI a dead end, and will we not be using VDI in the future? Well, first of all, to answer that question, you have to sort of define what are we talking about when we're talking about VDI. Because all of the VDI that I described in this presentation right now was the kind of VDI that we get today. This is VMware View 3. This is Citrix Zen Desktop 3. This is Quest vWorkspace 6. The current shipping products are exactly as we talked about today. But in the future, we're going to see an evolution. So what's that called? Are we going to call the newer versions of the technology? Is this still called VDI? Maybe it's called VDI Plus. It's like an extended version, the enhanced version of VDI. Or maybe we just call this desktops. So what I mean by that is, so remember when you first started using VMware for server virtualization in your company? You made a big distinction between which servers were physical and which were virtual. And you knew when you were connecting, even via the remote administration tools, whether you were connecting to a virtual machine or a physical server. But now, how many people in your companies call it a physical server? Oh, which server are you on? Oh, I'm on, which physical server are you on? Which virtual server? No, you don't use that. It's just called server. And there's probably a lot of you in here who don't even know if the servers you're connecting to are physical or virtual, which is nice, I would say. So we just call them servers. So maybe this VDI stuff that we're talking about today, maybe this is going to just be called desktops. It's not called VDI or VDI Plus. It's just the way it's done. And in 2 years, when we talk about desktop, we're talking about what has its roots in today's VDI. So where I'm going with this is that I talked about right now, server-based computing can only be used in certain use cases. And when you're using server-based computing, you make the decision about whether you want terminal server or whether you want VDI. And those have only specific use cases. But what would it take for VDI to be used everywhere? What would it take for every single desktop, every single user in your environment to be a VDI user? Is that possible, you think? Of course, right now, do you think that's possible with today's VDI? Hell no, it's not possible. But what if we look at the problems with today's VDI and offer solutions to those? And the way I see it, there are 5 technical limitations of VDI today that are preventing VDI from being used in every single